Did you know that if we're in South Korea, it's socially acceptable to not leave a tip? If we were in Bali, Indonesia on New Year's, we would participate in a 24-hour period of silence and meditation. Or maybe even light the night sky with lanterns in Yipang. What is interesting about these human activities is that they're not just common practices, they're traditions. In definition, tradition is the transmission of customs or beliefs that span generations. In theological terms, tradition can be defined as a doctrine believed to have divine authority, though not in the scriptures. Then, from the Bible, the attitude towards tradition shifts between Old and the New Testaments. In the Old, it is a teacher or a tool to bring us closer to God or help us remember who He is. But in the New, and towards the end of the Old, it takes on a completely new look on tradition, even going as far as calling it blasphemy. What many forget is that it was God Himself who gave man these traditions. Throughout the Gospels, there was constant disagreement between the Pharisees and Jesus, and at times, it seemed that an unstoppable had met an immovable object. These battles between Jesus and the Pharisees are all but a simple misunderstanding. Many thought Jesus came to destroy the law's traditions. But that wasn't the case at all, was it? He simply fulfilled them. To further understand this troublesome topic of tradition, we must take a look at Matthew 15, 1-20, beginning with verses 1-3, and it says, Then Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem and said, Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat. Now the elders here, though they had ill intent, had a legitimate grievance. At this point in time, they are celebrating the Passover. Now in those days, it was their custom to clean themselves before participating. Also keep in mind that Jesus' disciples had been working hard all day and hadn't pampered themselves, yet Jesus defends them. He answered them, And why do you break the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition? It gets especially interesting when Jesus specifies these traditions, implying that God doesn't care about all this extra stuff. He simply wants you to follow Him. Rather than focusing on upholding the true will of God, the Pharisees were too intently focused upon the trivial details of the law. Their focus was on knowing and speaking the law, not participating in it the way God intended. Because of this, they were the ones in violation of God's law, not Jesus and His disciples. The Pharisees claimed to follow the will of God, but they did so in vain. They knew all of the commands and the laws of God, and they could speak words of honor unto Him, but their hearts were far from God according to Jesus. This is the problem that needed to be addressed within the Bible, because it's still a problem that we as believers may often face. Rather than placing our focus upon the true will of God and keeping our hearts close to Him, we focus on all the trivial rules of the law. We succumb to Satan's intention to draw our attention away from the true issues and the laws of God that we should really be focusing on. This passage in the Bible serves as a warning to us as Christians to focus on the will of God rather than the trivial details that might cause our hearts to deviate from Him.